Hello, Sipsters. Welcome back to the Sippin' on Stories podcast. I'm Mandy Corey, your host, and I'm so delighted that you're here. This is the last episode until we have officially hit 6 months of this podcast, which is crazy. When I started this, I knew I had enough to get through like the first month, but I had no idea how much longer it would go after that. And so the fact that it has been 6 months is pretty amazing. And I'm grateful. So thank you for those people who are still listening and still tuning in every week. Thank you if you've submitted a story, if you have interviewed with me. I just really appreciate it. I was thinking about doing something a little different for next week, and it is just a 6-month update. So if you head over to my Instagram page at Sippin' on Stories podcast, I'm going to post on my stories a question box. You can ask anything you want. It can be about me, it can be about the podcast, anything. And I may just do a 6-month update about me and the podcast for next week. We shall see. And I also think it would be fun to have a few listener submissions. So I may have that as well. So go ahead and check out my Instagram. I'll probably post it a few times throughout the week. So if you have a question, go there to ask it. All right. So for today's episode, we have a returning guest. It's my mom. So she was episode number 1 on the podcast, and she's back again for another story. In fact, this one has multiple stories. So have you ever had any moments in your life where you're like, that could have ended so much differently? And I'm so grateful that I am still here to tell the tale. I know, speaking of episode number 1, talking about my neighbor who was unfortunately killed by his dad, and just where I kind of fit in with that story. It's crazy to think about sometimes, like, what if that would have gone differently? And it just makes you really grateful that it didn't, and that I'm still here. And there are a lot of times too, I know I've mentioned with my diabetes, like there have been some times that I'm like, I almost died, which obviously I didn't, but there are some times that I feel pretty scared that, it could have gone a lot differently in different situations. So do you have any of those? I'm sure we all do. Anyway, my mom is here to tell some of the times in her own life where she either came close to death or had a moment where she thought back and said, yeah, that could have gone a lot differently. We're lucky I'm still here to talk about that. So we call this the 9 lives of Caralee, my mom. So she goes through 9 different times in her life where it was a close call, I guess, if you will. And honestly, she still has more. These are just the ones that she remembered, and she is going to share them with us. So welcome back, my mom, for today's episode. We have my first repeat storyteller on the podcast today, and it's one of my favorite guests of all time, my mom. So hello, Caralee.
Oh, hello.
Thanks for coming back on. I mentioned in episode number 1 that I would probably have my mom on multiple times. And so she's back here to tell us some more stories. And in fact, she's going to tell multiple because my mom has had a few experiences where she cheated death or became close to dying, if you will. So she is going to tell us her 9 lives of Caralee. But beforehand, I haven't had a guest yet where I say we already talked about what your favorite drink was. And so now what do I do?
Well, because
I guess we could just
my favorite
say,
drink is still Baja Blast, the Mountain Dew Baja Blast Zero. Um, but
okay,
that
no, I
being
don't think that's
said,
what you said the last time.
yeah, that being said, um, I'm trying to drink like 90 ounces of water, 100 ounces of water a day. And so I don't have room for my
That's hard.
favorite drink anymore. Yes, I'm drinking
Yeah.
many water bottles and going to the bathroom many times during the day.
So
So
you wouldn't
right
say your
now,
favorite drink right now is water, but it's definitely the one you're
it's
consuming the most.
yes, yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, Mom, I'm just gonna let you start with life number one.
Okay. Well, I was pretty young. I was 9 years old and I was taking swimming lessons. Everybody knows I don't like water and I was not enjoying my swimming lessons, but all of my friends always wanted to go to the pool. And so I figured I needed to learn how to swim. Well, the problem was I was very, very skinny. I didn't have any fat on me. In fact, when I went to college, they did a measurement on me and I had 3% body fat on me. And so what that meant was I sank like a rock. I would kick as hard as I could, paddle as hard as I could, and ultimately I would be swimming in perfect form while I was diving to the bottom of the pool. Um, so it's Friday the 13th and it's my birthday. So I was jinxed to begin with. And what they did was they took us, yeah, they took us to the deeper end of the pool and they said, okay, you've done enough lessons. You're going to be able to swim to the other side of the pool with no problem. And all the kids jumped off and they started swimming over. But me and this other boy, we were just, nope, we can't do it. We can't do it. So they actually started prying our fingers off the edge of the pool. And they did that to the boy. And he, sure enough, he turned around and he swam across. Well, they pried my fingers off, and I tried to swim, but I sank to the bottom, just like always. And so, what I did when I got to the bottom was I would bounce off the bottom to go up so I could get some air. And then I would sink back
Mm-hmm.
to the bottom and I would walk along the bottom of the pool and then bounce up and get some air and then walk along the edge at the bottom of the pool because I was trying to make my way across the pool. But I got about
Yes.
halfway there and completely ran out of energy because it was a lot of work to be doing what I was doing. And so I basically just stayed on the bottom because I couldn't go up. And they finally realized, okay, she's not swimming. And they had to get one of those hooks and pull me out of the water. Um, it, so I don't remember a lot of what happened after that. I I do know that I was sick and I had a headache for like 3 days after that. Um,
You were conscious when
I
they
was
pulled you out.
conscious. Yes, I think so. I think so. I just
Mm-hmm.
don't remember the details. I don't remember people swarming around me and making a fuss. I just remember being pulled out of the pool. So I was
Mm-hmm.
conscious of that. Um, but what that did was it created this intense terror of water. Very, very afraid of water. I tell people that I wear a life jacket when I take a shower because I'm so afraid of water. um,
Yep.
and Halloween, when Halloween comes and everybody's watching horror movies, all I need to do is watch Titanic or where some ship is sinking, and that's the kind of horror movie because inside of me, I'm super jittery and jumpy, and so even watching water on TV terrifies me. But so
Yeah.
that was my first brush with almost drowning. Um, the second life, this is kind of a little bit of a darker conversation, but maybe it will help somebody out there. When I was in junior high, I was very, very, very depressed. I hid it really well because I knew that wasn't a normal thing. And when you're in middle school, all you want to be is normal. You don't want to be looked at differently. And so I tried to be normal around other people, but I was just depressed. Someone once joked, I was so mad at them. They joked, they said there was their teenager and she was really depressed. And they're like, what's a teenager got to be depressed about? They're just looking for attention. And I got really mad because depression is a very, very real thing. It's like you're in the bottom of a hole. Your heart actually hurts. Things are foggy. You're numb. Everything is darkness. It feels like the air is pressing in on you. It's just a very real experience, and you can't talk yourself out of it. People say, well, go do service and you'll feel better. I could give brownies to everybody on the block and I would still feel depressed. And the reason why there's a lot of depression is it's an actual chemical imbalance in your brain. And so it doesn't matter what you do, if there's a chemical imbalance in your brain, there's nothing you can do. You're just going to be depressed. So so here I am, super depressed, and honestly, I didn't think it would ever end because it just wouldn't go away. And so to me, suicide was the only option.
Did you talk to your parents about it?
Oh, no. I didn't talk to anybody about it.
Yeah, that's what I assumed.
Yeah, I was very, very quiet. So I figured suicide was the only solution, and so I planned it all out. In the school, there was a bathroom that had one stall, and nobody ever used it because I don't know what it is about middle school, but when girls go to the bathroom, they all go together. They're like a flock. And so since this was a one stall bathroom, nobody ever used it. And so I planned on going in there. And so the day came and I was so depressed that I was actually not inside my body. I was outside floating above my body, watching myself walk down the hall. And when people talked to me, it felt like they were underwater. Everything was not muggled. What's the word?
Muffled.
Muffled, yes. Muggle is out of Harry Potter.
Harry Potter. Yeah.
So I went to the bathroom and I was shocked because there were all these girls in this bathroom and they were all staring in the mirror and doing all this stuff. So I waited outside and waited for them to leave, and they left, and I went in and I closed the single door to it. I had a pocket knife and I pulled it out and I was ready to start, and I'm still not in my body. I'm still surreal. It was really weird. And just as I was ready to, cut myself, the power in the entire school went out. And what that did in this little tiny stall of a bathroom was it made it completely pitch dark. I couldn't see myself. I couldn't see anything. And what that did was it shocked me out of that dissociation that I was experiencing. It got me back in my body, and it kind of kicked me out of the routine that I had set up. And even the desire to do it left because it was just such a shock. So I folded up my knife and I went back out in the hall. And once I was out in the hall, the power came back on. So,
which is just amazing.
Yes. So my life was saved by an act of God, I guess. It's just the timing was amazing. But I have a couple words of advice it is Suicide Prevention Month, so I do want to say something. For people who are going through depression, it's not permanent. Um, there's there's no shame in taking medication because the medication will help balance those chemicals. Now, you have to be patient because they've got to find the right medication, and sometimes that takes a while. But if you're willing to just hang in there, which I did, I hung in there and got on meds that completely took it away. The other thing is, don't do what I did where I didn't talk to somebody. Just go talk to somebody, ask for help. Try to set up a support system saying, look, I'm just going through some rough times. If I come to you and say the word purple, you'll know that I'm in trouble and you can help me out because you're my really good friend. Parents, depression is very real, and so you need to take it seriously. Listen to how the person talks to themselves, how the kid talks to themselves, their self-talk. Are they changing their favorite things to do? Are they losing their appetite? Are they not doing things that normally brings them happiness? I look back on my life now because I was pretty young, and I've had some pretty amazing experiences because I did live. I've published several books. I got my master's degree. I raised 4 amazing kids. I've traveled around the world. I'm at peace even in difficult situations. I ran a Spartan race when I was 50 something. So the adventure doesn't end. And when I think back of all the things I would have missed out on had those lights not gone out, it's quite an eye-opener. So hang in there, stay with us is the message. And if you do need help, call 988. Or you can call them or text them and reach out for help. If you can't find anybody to go to, they'll work with you. So there's another one of my lives that was saved. And then, so I'm going to jump from that to camping. I love to camp. I love to fish and stuff, but as a kid, my family, they weren't campers and fishers, so I didn't get to do it as a kid. But when I was a little older, with some friends and a group of girls, we were camping in Island Park, and there was a group of girls and a few adults, and we were right by a mountain. And when I was young, if there was a mountain, it had to be climbed. It just was in my soul. I had to climb this mountain. So I managed to talk 5 people into going on this hike with me. But there was no trail, and it was slightly treacherous, and it was kind of a steep climb. So 4 of them left and told us, hey, when you get to the top, yell down at us and we'll wave at you and stuff like that. Well, we kept climbing up and we found this really skinny trail. And we started following that trail, and it was just windy. There was no rhyme or reason to this trail. We're following it to the top, and it would go by the side of the mountain, which the side of the mountain, it was a steep cliff on the side of the mountain. So it wasn't this rolling mountain. It was a cut-off cliff, and the camping was just right on the edge of the cliff. And on the side of the cliff was shale. All this shale rock. Anyway, well, we get to the
shale
top.
Rock?
Shale is a thin, flat rock. Like we used shale to put the floor in our living room in one of our houses. So they're pretty big, flat.
I have an idea in my mind.
1 inch thick rocks. Well, we finally get to the top and we start yelling down, but they couldn't hear us. We were yelling and we could actually hear everything they were saying, like with literal words. We could hear what they were saying, but they couldn't hear us. So we started yelling louder. And then all of a sudden my friend grabs me and said, "What was that?" And I stopped and I listened and there was nothing there. I said, oh, it's nothing. And so we yelled again. And then she said, no, seriously, what was that? But there was nothing there. So I started to yell again. And all of a sudden, I heard this behind me. It was a bear. And
Did you see it or just hear it?
I never turned around and looked. I just heard this roar like it was just behind my shoulder. And where we were at the top, it was a deep drop on this cliff. And my friend wanted to jump off the side to get away. And I'm like, no, we've got to run down the hill. We'll die if we jump right here. We'll die. And so I convinced her to run down this trail. And we could hear the bear behind us ruffling, huffing and snorting and whatever, as it's running on its forelegs through the brush and stuff. We could hear it. But once again, I never turned around and looked at it. So we finally get to a part of the mountain where the incline's not as steep, and it was shale all the way down the mountain. So I said, okay, let's just go here. And we literally slid from the top of the mountain down to the bottom of the mountain on this shale. It was like a sled type thing. And of course, the bear didn't follow us. So we get to the park, and both my friend and I thought we would get in a lot of trouble if we told anybody, because we kind of went off on our own without asking. So when we got back, we didn't tell anybody about it. I like to think that the bear, we were in its territory, and so it was just trying to scare us out of its territory by chasing us out of the territory. Of course, it's not going to go down a shale cliff, so that's why it didn't follow us.
Do I know this friend, or was this just a friend?
No, it was just a friend that was in the group with us.
Okay. Yeah,
So
that's crazy.
there's that story. And then the next story that I thought of, it's about 1985 now. And I'm in Provo, and I bought my first car. And my first car was...
You're at college?
You were at college? I was just working. I was trying to earn money to go to college, but I never ended up going to college till after I got married. What I did, though, was I bought my first car, and it was an MG, which is a British sports car. And it's
the good old MG.
Yes, and it's a convertible. So it was forest green with a black soft top and a tan interior. It was just a beautiful car, and I loved driving it around. Even in the winter, it was fun. So anyway, one day at this time I lived one town away from work. And so I had to get on the highway all the time to drive to this town. And I was driving, of course, with the top down on the highway and enjoying my ride. And I noticed there were tire treads in the road. They call them alligators. So when a semi-truck's tire blows up and it shreds to pieces, and there's pieces all over the road. Well, I saw these pieces all over the road. I was like, oh, which you see all the time. But it got me thinking. I thought, what would happen if a tire blew up right by me? What would I do? And so I started thinking of all these different alternatives. I thought, what if I just swerved to the right really quick, yanked to the right? But I looked, and there was a slight depression that went down into so it wasn't steep, but it would have been enough that if I had gone to the right, I would have rolled the car. And I didn't have seatbelts in my car, so I would have been thrown from the car. So I thought, okay, I can't do that. And what if my reaction was I swerved to the left, and I thought, oh, that'd be even worse. I'd drive under the semi truck and get run over by its tires. And so what I decided was if that ever happens, I'm just going to squeeze the wheel and drive on.
Yeah.
Well, 5 minutes, maybe 5 minutes later, the truck right next to me, the tire blows up. Pieces are flying through the air. I actually got hit in the head with one of those pieces. But because I had already decided what I was going to do, I squeezed the wheel and drove on. And I didn't react and didn't get in an accident. I just squeezed the wheel and drove on.
Okay, well, how big was this piece that hit you in the head? Because I feel like that would have been going pretty fast, Mom.
I was going fast. I don't know how big it was. I saw it coming, but I don't know how. It wasn't a great big. It wasn't like half the tire hit me in the head. It was
No.
one of the
No,
shreds.
that would have knocked you out.
Yeah, it was just one of the shreds that hit me in the forehead. So if I hadn't have decided ahead of time and I get hit in the head, I am going to react to that. People would react to that, and they would swerve right, or they'd swerve left, or they'd slam on their brakes and then cause an accident for the people behind them. But I had already decided what I was going to do, so I just literally squeezed the wheel and drove on. And then I got ahead of it, didn't look back, and there we have it. Another time my life was saved miraculously.
Yeah, because what are the odds that you'd be thinking about that right before? Did it make you nervous every time you drive by a semi-truck after that?
No, it didn't.
For a while?
Actually.
Oh, really?
Nope. It didn't. I didn't even think about it.
Oh, interesting. I guess that's good too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my next story. So I'm now married, and I have 2 kids, and I'm pregnant with the 4th. And with my first pregnancy, I got an umbilical hernia that made my belly button stick out really far. And I kind of just lived with this bulge on my belly button because I didn't want to go in and have surgery and stuff. So each kid, I just lived with it. But on my 4th pregnancy, I knew in my heart that that was my last child, that I was not going to have any more. So I figured, okay, and I had all of my kids C-section. And so I knew I was going in for a C-section, and I thought, while I'm already under, why don't I get a hernia doctor to come in and stitch up this hernia and fix it at the same time? And so I found a hernia doctor, and he said, yep, I can do that. And it was all planned months and months ahead of time. And so about 6 months into the pregnancy, I started feeling horribly sharp pains in my stomach. It was like my stomach was ripping apart. I thought, I'm giving birth to an alien. I really thought an alien was going to jump out of my stomach because it was so painful. And I went to the doctor and talked to him about it. And he said, well, every pregnancy is different. That's all he said to me. Well, I went home, and in my soul, I knew that something was terribly wrong. And so I self-inflicted bed rest for the last 3 months of my pregnancy. I wasn't in bed, though. What I did was I stayed on the couch. So you guys are pretty little. I had 4 kids in 4.5 years. And so you're still
you did. So you still had to take care of us.
Yes, still pretty little. But Michelle did a great job getting water for you guys if you needed water. And you guys were really good for that 3 months. And my husband, Wayne, he also helped out a lot, doing all the housework and stuff like that. I just basically laid there for 3 months. So I go in to have my C-section, and they put an epidural in, but the hernia doctor didn't show up when he was supposed to. So the doctor took the baby, and was like, okay, you need to get this, that you've got a serious hernia. You need to get it fixed. He also said that my uterus was so thin he could read a newspaper through it. So that's relevant as the story goes on. I don't like needles, and I didn't want to get another epidural, so I literally laid in that bed with an epidural in my back until 5 o'clock. And since it was surgery stuff, that meant I couldn't eat. That meant I couldn't drink. And the nurses were so mad at this doctor because he finally comes in. Oh, I forgot all about it. And then he took one look at me and he said, I can't fix this. If we go into surgery right now, you've got 10% chance of survival. Because what had happened, that terrible, painful, sharp feeling was my muscular wall was separating so that by the time it was done, it was on both sides of my belly. So the only thing holding me in and the only thing holding Hadley in was my skin. There was no abdominal wall there.
The diastasis recti?
The what?
Are you familiar with that term? The diastasis recti?
I don't know what that means.
Anyway, continue on. Where your abs separate during pregnancy.
That must be what it is then. But they were clear over on the side of my body.
But yours were really bad.
Yeah. So with the uterus being so thin, Hadley really, he's my fourth one, was really lucky to have made it here because the uterus could have broken. It would have just been horrible with just skin filling me in. So he said 10% chance of survival today. If you come back in 6 weeks, I'll give you a 50% chance of survival to fix this. And I'm like, well, we got to fix it, so I'll go with the 50%. So they gave me this bandage thing to put around me that I wore for 6 weeks. I went back to the same hospital, and the nurses remembered me, and they were still mad at the doctor. So they treated me like royalty. They gave me everything that I wanted. They were super nice because they hated the doctor. Anyway, so he comes in, and I'm put to sleep for this operation. And when I wake up, the nurses told me that he felt bad about the whole situation. And so not only did he take care of the hernia, but he took out all the abdominal fat from the baby fat.
Yeah.
Took all that out. So
I had a mommy makeover.
I had a mommy makeover. I had a flat stomach. But the disadvantage was he was concentrating so much on that he forgot to put my belly button back. And so I have a completely flat stomach with no belly button.
Yeah.
And when
it's always so weird when we were kids.
So when I tell people I don't have a belly button, they're like, of course you do, because there's no way you'd be born without one. But I don't have a belly button. And one funny story, I was in some hospital in some small town, and there was this little Indian doctor from India, and she was just tiny, and she was doing the little physical on me, and she started pushing around my stomach, and she had this really worried look on her face, and she's pushing around and looking and looking and looking, and then I realized she's looking for my belly button. she thought she had seen a medical marvel.
Like, how did this baby get here?
Right.
They have no belly button. Yeah.
I kind of just laughed about it for a little bit and let her search around, and then finally I told her, "Oh, if you're looking for a belly button, I don't have one."
That's so funny. So yeah, that could have been bad.
Yeah, that one was bad. Even with waiting and stuff, I just had a 50% chance of survival because it was so bad.
So, continuing on to life number 6.
Life number 6. So, I'm way older and I'm remodeling my house. And I've got divorced years and years and years ago. And so I've been on my own, and I've always done things on my own. And I usually don't ask for help on things just because
you don't.
I'm stubborn. So I'm remodeling the house by myself, and I've had several precarious situations. But I made it
this
through.
The house that you're currently in?
Yes, the house that I'm currently in. I painted it by myself. It's a 2-story colonial Boston style home.
I came and helped you paint it, so let's not go there. And I was terrified for my life up in the bucket, but I did it.
Yes, I do remember that. Yes, I did have some help occasionally from people.
But you did do a lot by yourself as well.
It was horrible. But that's different. So I'm putting together a theater room, and it's got a platform that I want to put my drum set on and music on. Or if I have lots of people, I could move that out and put another couch there so that it's double seating for movies. Anyway, I was needing to put the paneling back up on the wall and put the paneling in front of the platform. And so I had to borrow Dad's table saw, which is probably from the 70s. I hate it. I hate using it every time. It doesn't have any guards on it. It's a tiny table, so you're sawing your wood, and that's about all the room it has. It's on top of metal legs that aren't very sturdy. Yeah. Anyway, I just hate using it. But I needed to cut, or rip is what you call it, some 8-foot planks. Now, what I was using was old wood that had knots in it. And technically, when you're ripping planks, you're supposed to have, it's 2 people doing it. One person holds one end and the other person runs it through so that it doesn't kick and go crooked. But I was by myself and it needed to get done. But I'm down to my last few planks. It's getting late, so I'm just going to do it. I tried really hard to rip it. So when you're cutting wood, the length of the wood, it's called ripping. If you're cutting the board to make it shorter, it's called crosscut. Okay. So I'm ripping these planks, and I put the blade, put it on the blade, and it was going through, and I was doing pretty good. And then all of a sudden, it just kicked. The blade kicked, the board flew, everything happened really quick. Both pieces flew off. But what happened when it kicked like that, it caused the table to fall forward. So the blade, I'm not far from the table, and it's falling towards me, and the blade is still going full speed, and it's going right towards my stomach. But I have fairly quick reflexes, so with my left hand, I grabbed the left hand side of the table saw and pushed it back up so that it wouldn't fall, and steadied it back on the ground. Do you know what the first thing I did after that happened?
Finished ripping your board?
Where I almost got eviscerated. Is that the word? Where the blade cut my stomach in half?
Oh, God. No, tell me.
I just looked around to see if anybody saw it.
If anyone just so happened to come inside to be like, oh, hopefully nobody saw that.
That's exactly what it was. I was so afraid somebody saw that, and I was super embarrassed. But it also scared me to death. And so I stopped right then, put everything back in the house. And the next day I went out, and there was some stranger sitting outside his house. And I went to him and I said, hey, can you help me rip these boards? And so I got help with the last few of them. But I thought about it later, and I was pretty lucky, even with my hand, to put it out there on that table. If I had misjudged it, I could have lost a thumb, I could have lost fingers. because until the table was steady, I wasn't able to push the off button, which is in the front of the table on the
God.
side.
Yeah, Mom, you
So
were not good about asking for help. It's true that we never think that we're the exception to any rule. You hear something's dangerous and you think, well, not me.
yeah,
That's you, Mom.
or I just have one. I'll just do it this one little time. That is the sad story that a lot of people in the hospital say.
Mm-hmm.
So my seventh life, about 10 years ago, I was diagnosed with celiac disease, which means I can't have gluten. I have to have a gluten-free diet. And if I get gluten, I get pretty sick. And the two things that I was very upset that I couldn't eat anymore were donuts and pizza. Even though they have gluten-free pizza, it wasn't the big, thick crust pizza that's super fat. And anyway, so I've really missed that. Well, I was going to a new doctor. I keep trying to find a doctor. I can't find one I like. So I went to another one, and it was just a yearly physical. So they ran different tests, and I went back for the checkup. And she says, "Why do you say you have celiac? You don't have celiac." And I said, "Yes, I do. They did an endoscopy, they did a biopsy. They say I have celiac." And she started yelling at me, "You do not have celiac. Why stop saying you have celiac?" I don't know what was up, why
Like,
she
what
was
on your
so...
chart made her think that?
Well, when they took the test, what she didn't realize and what I didn't think about till way after the effect was I had been off gluten for about 8 years. And so there were no antibodies in my bloodstream to show that I did have celiac. If you have celiac, you've got those antibodies trying to fight it off the gluten. But I had been gluten-free for so long that, of course, those antibodies aren't going to be in my system. So, of course, it's going to look like I don't have celiac. That's why they tell people if you want to test for gluten intolerance or celiac, don't stop eating gluten before you take your test, because it won't be a good result, a true result. So anyway, I'm kind of perplexed with this. I don't have celiac. I do have celiac. What do I do? What do I think? And it just so happened to be National Donut Day, which is November 5th this year, by the way.
Coming up.
Yes, National Donut Day, and I love donuts. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to buy some donuts in the morning, and I'll eat those in the morning, and then I'm going to go buy a Bigfoot pizza and have that for dinner at night. And I was so excited. What?
I thought this was because it was your celiac anniversary that you were going to do that.
I thought I would have a celiac day and just one day a year eat something celiac. But then right before that time came up, I would get something in my system and get sick and think, I don't want to go through that. So I've never done celiac day. But on National Donut Day, I ate 2 donuts. One was glazed and one was chocolate, and they were so good. Oh, I just enjoyed every bite. I couldn't believe what I'd been missing out on. Anyway, so then I went down. I had some time on my hands, and all the Legos were out because the grandkids had been playing with them. And I wanted to sort them because I have about 25,000 Legos.
Yeah,
and
you've got a ton.
I've got a lot, and I wanted to sort them so I could rebuild I've got 5 electric train sets, Lego sets, and I wanted to rebuild those electric trains. And so I thought, I'm going to start separating out the pieces so that I can do that. And I was down there for about 2 hours, and then I started sweating really, really bad, like it's dripping off my nose. And I'm like, what in the world is going on? So I go upstairs and think, well, maybe I'm having a reaction or whatever. And then it was just sudden. I ran into the bathroom. I threw up. I was super sick. And then, so I'm in the bathroom. I can't stand up. I crawled into my bedroom. And I tried to get on my bed, but I couldn't get on my bed, and things started really hazing over. So I had the presence of mind to call 911, but I didn't have the presence of mind to tell them my correct address. I
Mm-hmm.
told them the wrong address. So luckily the front door was unlocked, but I could hear sirens up and down the street. And then I thought I had just barely hung the numbers to my house. I had just barely hung those back on the house after painting it. And
Mm-hmm.
I could see him in my mind, and I thought, wait a minute, I think I gave him the wrong address. So I called 911 again and said, here's the right address. Well, they were right there after that. And
Mm-hmm.
they came upstairs and they asked me who the president was. I didn't know. They asked me who my kids were. I couldn't answer them. They asked me to smile, and I had this really lopsided smile, I guess. And they
Mm-hmm.
said, we really don't feel comfortable about leaving you here. So they took me in the ambulance to the hospital, and then I just started crashing. Um, I My body temperature kept getting lower and lower, and I was freezing to death. And they would put all these hot blankets on me, got the IV started, and they put this really cool, it's a vented hot blanket where hot air blows into the blanket and it's right on your body. And
Mm-hmm.
then they gave me another IV, and I said, why are you, I already have an IV. Why are you giving me another one? And they said, you are very, very sick. And so, with all of that, my body temperature dropped to 94 with even when I was super heated up.
Mm-hmm.
But they were able to stabilize me and it stopped dropping. And while I'm laying there and they're going about their business and stuff, Hadley happened to call because
Yeah.
I didn't even think about calling you guys to tell you I was in the hospital. But Hadley called with the question. And I said, well, I'm in the hospital. So Hadley came and actually picked me up and took me home. And I was really tired and hazy for a couple days after that. But they said it was a really close call because my body was just shutting down. The
Mm-hmm.
whole body was shutting down. Um, the one thing I did want to do was I wanted to give the hospital bill and take it to that doctor
Yeah. Be like,
and
this is
say,
your fault. You
this is
told
all
me.
your fault.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember getting the phone call that you were at the hospital, and I was just so grateful that you actually called 911 because it kind of seemed something like you wouldn't do.
Yeah,
Was to call 911. Like, you're just so like, well, it'll be fine. I'll, get through whatever by myself. And so I was like, she called 911. It must have been bad.
it was, yeah.
So, yeah.
And I'm glad I did too because things just started crashing so fast
Yeah.
after that. Yeah. So I do have celiac, unfortunately. No more donuts. And it's like an addiction because now that I had those donuts, I relapsed on
I,
donuts. And all I can think about is how tasty they were and how bad I want them again.
And
If
how
I
long ago
hadn't
was
had
that?
them, it was a couple years ago.
Yeah. I feel like it was longer than that at this point. But,
Yeah, it was, I don't remember what year it was, but it was maybe 3 years ago that it
mm-hmm.
happened.
And now you just want one.
Yes, yes. So my last two stories are all my last two lives, I guess, were spent while on fishing trips.
Yep. I
Um,
knew these ones were going to be coming.
yeah. So, so I didn't grow up in a family that went camping and fishing, but I really wanted to learn how to hunt and I wanted to learn how to fish. And I kept asking people to teach me, and nobody would teach me. So I finally decided I'm just going to teach myself. I got a pole, tried to figure out hooks, and tried to figure out knots, and do I use worms, or what are these little things that spin around? And they would use terms that I didn't understand. Anyway, and so I would go fishing on my own and usually have some luck pulling in the fish. Um, but I always fished off the banks because, again, I'm terrified of water. But then one thing that I don't like is to have fears hold me back.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I was afraid of heights, so I jumped out of an airplane. I'm afraid
Yeah.
of spiders, so I went to a tarantula place and had a tarantula walk on my arm. Um, and so here's water, and I made myself step into the water where it was ankle deep, and I would fish a little bit, and then I'd say, okay, let's go in up to my knees. But I was always very, very cautious. Every step I took, I made sure that it was solid and I wouldn't fall. Anyway, I got super jiggly inside because of my fears, but I just did it. Well, one day I was fishing in a different place, and it was a river with a boat dock, and I was fishing off the dock, but it wasn't a good ideal. It wasn't an ideal place to fish, and the dock was deep, but I found a spot where it was kind of shallow, so I went in. But before I went in, I got a walking stick, because as I was walking in this river that was shallow, the current was pretty fast, but it wasn't rapids.
Mm-hmm.
But what was happening as I was walking was silt would come up, so I couldn't see the steps in front of me. And I didn't know if it would drop off into a deep part of the river. So I used my walking stick and prodded ahead of me, okay, this is shallow, I can keep going. And then it would drop, and I'd be like, okay, I'd try to find a way around that spot on shallow ground, but sometimes it was just deep across the whole river. And so what I would do is I would go up on the bank, which there wasn't really a bank. It was overgrown bush and trees falling in the water, and there were no trails. There literally was nowhere to stand. But I would crawl into the brush, and I would kind of squeeze past the brush and through the trees until I got to another spot in the river that looked like it was shallow, and I would get back in the river again. So that was kind of the process I did. And I kept fishing and walking and fishing and walking. And then I could see where it joined up with the Snake River. And I have horrible fears with the Snake River. So I wasn't going anywhere near that. I thought, okay, it's time to turn around. What I realized then was walking with the current is a lot easier than walking against the current. So on the way back, I was getting really, really tired. But every now and then I had to keep crawling up into the overgrowth or the bushy side of the river to try to stay away from the deep parts. Anyway, I'm walking through the bush, and I'm starting to walk around this big tree. And there you could see the roots above ground, and I was standing on one of the roots, and I was about to take a step. There were two roots about 3 feet apart, and I was about to step down, but I used my walking stick first and put my walking stick down, and the whole stick sank into this hole that was at least 5 feet deep. And it was, like I said, about 3 feet before the next root, and it was only about 3 feet long. So it was just this tiny, deep, deep hole. I don't know how it was created, but if I hadn't have used my walking stick, I would have stepped right into that hole. My other leg probably wouldn't have followed me. It probably would have cinched up and dislocated my hip. I could have twisted my ankle. I could have broken some ribs. And I kept prodding around, and it was just this sheer wall. I don't know how it was made.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I went on the other route, got back in the river, and I made it back to the boat dock. But that one really, really scared me. My imagination went crazy, because I thought if I had fallen in this hole, nobody would find me. There's no way I'd be able to get out. And I didn't have my phone with me. I didn't tell anybody where I was at. So they might have found my car, but I was about a mile away from my car in the overgrowth. So nobody would have looked in the overgrowth. And so that was scary to me. I got really scared. And to the point of this year when I went fishing, I managed to find the same place, even though I wasn't looking for it. And I saw the boat dock. I'm like, oh, this is where I was before. And then I had like PTSD.
Yeah.
And it just
Can't go
came
back there.
back so strong that I didn't even step into the river. I just walked away and didn't fish there at all
Mm-hmm.
because it scared me so bad. Um, and then my last story, I'm at Island Park on Coffee Pot. And I had camped at Coffee Pot, and there's a trail you can follow that takes you through the river, and you can fly fish on the river. And it's really wide, but then it narrows, and there's some good fishing holes there. And then it gets even more narrow and a lot faster, and it turns into rapids. And somebody said they're a class 3 rapid. Somebody looked it up. I don't remember who it was. But anyway, I thought I had gotten up early enough to go to the spot I like to go to, but by the time I got there were people fishing there. So I kept walking, and there were people fishing this other place, and I kept walking, and there were people fishing. So then I get to the rapids, and I thought, okay, I'll find a spot in the rapids where sometimes off on the bank it's deep and still, and fish like to hang out in those kind of areas instead of flopping over the rocks. So I found this place that was okay, comfortable. I was standing a little bit in the water, and the first two casts, I didn't cast long enough, so it didn't work. And then the second cast, I cast too long and snagged. And so I lost that hook and lost I put little colored bobbins on my thing so I could watch it float down the river and know when to reel it back in. Anyway, lost that. But then the next two casts, I caught two fish, bang, bang, just like that. I thought, yep, I found the hole. But I just had to be really careful to watch the line that it wouldn't get snagged in the rocks where the rapids were. Well, I'm on my last line, last hook, last bobbin, and it gets snagged. And I was like, So I went into the river, and it was a really strong current, but it wasn't deep. And so I thought, I'm just going to follow my line and tug on it and see if I can unsnag it. Well, I went to take a step and didn't know that there was nothing there. It dropped immediately, and I was up to my waist in, it was almost like a falls, where the falls are. I was against the falls, and the water was rushing against my chest. And I'm like, I don't know how to get out of this. I literally don't know. I can't stand up. There's nothing to stand on. I can't pull myself up. So I was kind of holding on to my line, and I went to maneuver myself back towards the shore, but the line snapped because I was holding on to it too much, and I was relying too much on that for my balance, and it completely threw me off balance and threw me right into the rapids. And so I'm going. What's interesting is, as terrified as I am of water, I was very calm. I didn't freak out. I didn't panic. I just thought, okay, keep your body level, keep your feet up where you can see them, keep your head above ground, and just kind of ride the rapids. But the rapids were twisting me around, so sometimes I'd be on my stomach, sometimes I'd be sideways. It was a crazy ride. And there were rocks, and I'd try to grab a hold of the rocks, and then there was this tree sticking out in the river, and I thought, okay, I'll grab onto the tree. But I was going so fast, and the tree was slippery that it just went out of my hands.
Yeah.
So what I did was, when it flipped me on my stomach, I would try to dog paddle over to, because I don't really know how to swim, I would try to dog paddle closer to the shore, and then it would flip me and I would swim a little further, and then I dog paddle. And I finally was able to dog paddle over to a shallow area and pull myself out of the rapids. Then I had a very long walk back to my fishing pole that was still sitting there on the side of the river
That's what
with
I
a
was
broken
thinking.
line.
Wondering how
And I
long
was
back that walk was.
sopping wet from head to toe. The one thing that didn't get wet was my hat. There was not one drop of water on my hat because I made sure I kept my head above water.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and then you
So
got in the car and you called me in a panic and I got upset. Because once
yes,
again, nobody knew where you were. And you were
yeah,
by yourself doing things you shouldn't be doing.
yeah. So yes, if I were a cat, I've used up my 9 lives. I'd be dead now.
Yes. And there's even more in there
So
that,
there are more that I'm not going to talk about. So I've actually
yeah.
used more than 9 lives.
Yes.
But I'm grateful to be alive. I'm thankful to be alive. I get to play with my grandkids and play with you guys, and we have great family get-togethers, and
Mm-hmm.
so I get to, and I got married again, so now I get to have that adventure with marriage, and so life is good. I've been very blessed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is one thing that I'm grateful for with you being remarried is I'm like, okay, well, you're not going to be at home all by yourself when you're doing who knows what. So, if anything, that's a level of safety there, and we have banned you from going fishing in any. You have to tell everyone where you are, preferably with somebody, but yeah, you're on thin ice right now, Mom, with your fishing.
Well, and now that I'm married, I can say, okay, I'm going fishing up at Coffee Pot. I
Mm-hmm.
need to tell them where I'm going and stuff. So there's some sense of accountability there where before I was just free. I would just go wherever I wanted to go and drive wherever I wanted to drive and
Do whatever you want to do.
do whatever I wanted to do. Saw boards when I shouldn't be sawing boards.
Eat donuts when you're not supposed to be eating donuts.
Yep, yep.
Yeah.
He would have definitely stopped me from eating donuts.
Yeah. Well, I'm obviously grateful that you are still here.
Well,
So,
me too.
and I hope that there are no more stories like this coming in the future of you could have died today. So, thank you for sharing all of those stories with everybody.
Yes.
One of our interview number 2, and I can even still think of more that if you wanted to come on and talk about, you still could.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Okay. Well, thanks for having me
okay, well,
again.
yes, thank you, Mom. Always love
And
talking to you.
I'll go drink some water.
Yeah, and then go to the bathroom and drink some more
Yep.
water. Okay, love you.
Love you. We'll talk to you later.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
So I have this journal, if you will. It's a 5-year journal where every day it asks you a question for a year, and then the next year you go back and start over. So you can see your answers every day for a 5-year time span to just, kind of see what's happened over the last 5 years. And it asks you a question. And my question a few days ago was, who is your hero? And I wrote down my mom. And I looked up from the last year and I had written my mom the time before, and it is just true. She truly is my hero. She has been through so many different things and trials in her life, and she's just been such a strong example to me of persevering and just never giving up, I guess. And I respect her and admire her so much. And some of these, stories that she told, I know some of them were heavier than others. My mom, again, I've known she's dealt with depression for a lot of my life. And so we've talked about different things, but I actually hadn't heard the story that she shared about being in the middle school bathroom until a couple weeks before this interview. And I just am so grateful that she is still here. Again, she mentioned that September was Suicide Awareness Month and just really wanted to speak about that. So I know it was a little bit more heavy for that, but I'm grateful that she shared her experience and just the fact that she can look back and be very grateful that that was unsuccessful and look at the life that she's been able to live since then. So I'm just so grateful for my mom. And also, I just have to roll my eyes so many times when she will tell these stories, like, or more like when she lived them, specifically the donut, eating the donuts. I know how much she wanted that donut, but when I found out that she was in the hospital, I was just like, oh my gosh. And I was so grateful that she called 911 because that could have ended differently. But she had one of the fishing experiences just within the last few months. And I just was like, Mom, we cannot be doing this. And it just like terrifies me every time. And again, I'm just so grateful that she is still here with me. And I have her in my life. So yes, I am interested if any of you have experiences like these where you're like, whoa, that was close, or, we're grateful that we're still here type of a situation. I'd love to hear about it. So go ahead and DM me, comment on this episode, do whatever, and I'd be interested. All right, let's see. Jumping into something else, a couple of updates with my life is I thought I would tell you that I have been training for a half marathon. I know I had mentioned, oh boy, what episode was that? I think it was the biking across America. Anyway, that I was probably going to be running one this upcoming year, and I have officially signed up for it. So I have been in training mode. I am running it with my bestie, and honestly, she's been killing it in the training too. So it has been good. The last race I ran, I told myself I was never running again in my life. That training season was so hard. The race, actually, it was a funny story. I was pretty delirious during the race, but I just finished and I said I never have to do that again. And I legitimately didn't put my running shoes back on for at least probably a year and a half. Like I couldn't even look at them. I never wanted to see them again. So the fact that I'm here, I have been training, running, I got some new shoes. I am grateful because I do enjoy running. It's been good. It was a relief to not dread every time I had to put my shoes on. So that's a little bit of something that I have been doing. Another thing is I started watching Dancing with the Stars. So I've actually never seen a season, but I started that and it's been fun. And it just so happens to be on Tuesdays. So Tuesday's just a good day. You get a new episode of the Sippin' on Stories podcast. And then if you're wanting to watch Dancing with the Stars, you get that too. So that's been fun. I always love fall because my favorite shows come back, such as Survivor, that also started. And I'm a huge Survivor fan. Okay. Apparently I am in a chit-chatty mood right now. So I can tell I would just keep rambling, but I will save that for next week for my 6-month update episode. All right, you guys. Again, go over to my Instagram, ask me some questions. It can be anything you want. And I'll be here next week for another episode of the Sippin' on Stories podcast. Goodbye.